Connected with news you can trust.
Please listen at 7 p.m. every weekdays for Freedom Evening News Basket.
From the News Center of Freedom Communications Incorporated. Pleasant welcome to Freedom Evening News Basket. 45-minute production of news. Good evening from the News Center of Freedom Communications Incorporated. A pleasant welcome to Freedom Evening News Basket. 45-minute production of all of the latest captivating news about Liberia, Africa, and the rest of our global village. It's midweek Wednesday, 28th June 2023. My name is Hagar Gunnar. I'm covering tonight's edition of the news program. And in the top developments we're following, the head of the Liberian delegation to the 62nd section of the Organization of African, Caribbean, and Pacific States Parliament, Representative Akaras Gray, presents Liberia's gain through legislative enactment for sustainable development on women and youth empowerment. The Institute for Democratic Action and Development, with support from USAID, on Wednesday held a day-long meeting geared towards strengthening CSOs and CBOs' capacity. The consortium leaders for the re-election of President George Weah in the Southeast, Victor Williams and Swadodi Doe, found guilty and sentenced to 6 months imprisonment for misapplication of entrusted properties. And outside of Liberia, the United Nations has warned of an increasingly dire humanitarian situation in northeastern Nigeria, according to the BBC. The detail of these developments, plus other local and international stories, the voices of those behind the news, are all lined up on tonight's edition of the news program. At this juncture, we'll cross over to the news center where Alexander Yiniki is seated to bring for us the full bulletin of news. Alex, good evening, welcome.
Good evening, Hagar, and good evening, listeners. Liberia has joined other countries, including Caribbean, Pacific States Parliaments, in observation of the 62nd section of the Organization of Africans. Head of the delegation, Akaras Gray, presented Liberia's gains through legislative enactment for the sustainability of women and youth empowerment. According to a dispatch from Brussels, Representative Gray took part in discussions at the opening of the former section of the second OACPs at its headquarters in Brussels, which covered issues ranging from partnership within member states and their links with the European Union, among others. Parliamentarians from member states of African, Caribbean, and Pacific are participating in the 62nd section of the OACP's Parliamentary Assembly and 43rd section of the ACP-EU Joint Parliamentary Assembly in Brussels, Belgium. The legislature of Liberia is represented by Montserrat County District 8 Representative Akaras Gray, who's engaged in a long 10-day section aimed at addressing pertinent international and regional matters. During the opening section, Ana Rita Sito, Speaker of the Mozambique Parliament and the current President of the OACP's Parliamentary Assembly, gave the opening statement, highlighting the state of play on many challenges faced by OACP's countries, as well as some unresolved issues regarding the signing of the post-Cotonou agreement with European. She further restated the commitment to improve the visibility of the Parliamentary Assembly and strengthen their organ and create alliances with key strategic assemblies. For his part, Representative Akaras Gray thanked the presiding officer, Madam Rita Sito, and called on his colleagues to firstly implement domestic policies and laws that will target sustainable development amongst youth and women. He named the National Youth Policy, Gender Parity Act, among other laws and policy as tools that Liberia has set to address those issues. According to District 8 lawmaker, by implementing the National Youth Policy and the Gender Parity Act, they are taking crucial steps towards creating an inclusive and equitable society. The Institute for Democratic Action and Development, with support from USAID, on Wednesday held a day-long meeting geared towards strengthening CSOs and CBOs capacities. The meeting brought together key stakeholders, including European Union, the U.S. Embassy, CSOs, and CBOs, among others. Giving the overview of the meeting, the Executive Director of the Institute for Democratic Action and Development, Joseph Chien, said the gathering was to strengthen CSOs and CBOs capacities to advocate for policy implementation. The meeting, according to Chien, was also intended to explain the workings of the institution to the participants. The Institute for Democratic Action and Development is a capacity building and advocacy organization that promotes democracy, rule of law, and natural resource management, a policy advocacy in Liberia. The group under the banner consortium leaders for the re-election of President George Weah in the Southeast, Victor Williams and Solide Doe, have been found guilty, charged, and sentenced to 6 months imprisonment for misapplication of entrusted property. According to a Harper Ministerial Court ruling, the defendants, Victor Williams and Solido, were entrusted with the amount of $250,000 Liberian on April 11, 2023, by the CDC Chairman Mobile Modu at the Plebo City Hall for the Cape Palmas High School. The defendants alleged to refuse to give said amount to the institution. The court's ruling further noted that when the case was called for hearing, defendants Solide Doe and Victor Williams were informed by the court of their constitutional right to have a lawyer of their choice, but requested that they present or represent themselves in court, and was granted the court. The ruling, however, stated that due to the defendants' inability to produce Chairman Cyrus Doe and Chairman Mobile Molu to substantiate their claims, the court called on the defendants to restitute the amount and will at the same time be sentenced to 6 months imprisonment at the Harbour Central Prison. However, after the final ruling, the defendants William, Victor Williams and Soldo Doe prayed for an appeal to the circuit court and was granted by the Ministerial Court and asked to appear at the circuit court within 15 working days, including Saturdays. The national coordinator of a pro-democracy group, He for She Crusaders Liberia, Tama Johnson, has commended the House of Representatives for unanimously voting and concurring with the Liberian Senate in passing the drugs law, thus making drugs a non-bailable offense in Liberia. On Tuesday, during the 13th day sitting of the second quarter of the 6th section of the 54th National Legislature, the House of Representatives passed the Drugs Act ahead of the October 10, 2023 elections. The act is currently before President Weah for enactment into law. Speaking Wednesday in an interview with the station in Pinzo, Johnson calls on President Weah for speedy approval of the law to help address the issue of illegal substance abuse. Johnson wants the signing or enactment of the act to serve as one of President Weah's legacy to leave behind in protecting the youthful population. He, however, stressed the proper implementation of the act when officially printed into the handbill. Recently, Johnson described the Liberian legislators as killers of Liberian children due to their failure to pass the drug law. The National Youth League of the Coalition for Democratic Change has commended President Julius Maada Bio of the Republic of Sierra Leone on the occasion commemorating his re-election as president of the West African region. President Julius Maada Bio of the Sierra Leone People's Party was re-elected on June 27, defeating 12 of his opponents, including his biggest rival of the All People's Congress, Samura Kamara. In a news conference Wednesday at the party's headquarters in Congotown, the Secretary General of the CDC National Youth League, Hanson Newland, reeling the statement said the Youth League sees the victory as a victory for the people of Sierra Leone and similar feat the CDC will be achieving comes or towards the elections. He further lauded all international and local observers for the impartial roles played in making sure the people in Sierra Leone had free and fair elections. Newland furthered that the need for the promotion of democracy and peace in the Mana River region and the sub-region is a paramount concern to all current leaders. Over 50 journalists covering the Ministry of Information, Cultural Affairs and Tourism regular press briefing have ended a day-long capacity building training in Monrovia. The training was organized by the former BBC correspondent Hansan Kiawu in collaboration with the Mikat Reporters Network with support from the Ministry of Information. At the end of the training, Information Minister Legerwood Reigning challenged Paris and Liberian journalists to take advantage of their training opportunities. According to Minister Reigning, capacity building helps the work that journalists do. As such, they must be willing to learn at all times. He also described learning as a mere tool to enhance the reading and writing skills of media practitioners. A Liberian lawyer says one of the lessons learned from the observance of the June 24th presidential and general contest in Sierra Leone is for Liberians to fully participate in the presidential and legislative elections. Anthony Samuel Kofi Woods, who was a member of the West African Independent Observer Mission in Sierra Leone, said the National Elections Commission must play a neutral role in the October polls. Speaking in an interview with Voice of America Daybreak Africa, Anthony Woods called on the civil society organizations and individuals get involved in the voter education. According to him, all Liberian CSOs and stakeholders should take ownership of the elections in the country so as to avoid violence. A pro-female development organization, Book Before Boys, has joined the cause on the Liberian government to do all they can in halting the high fees paid for graduation in private and public schools in the country. Book Before Boys country director Mustafa Shemat said it is unfair, unthinkable, and exploitative for schools administrators to be charging high fees for graduation. Shemat told a news conference that Ministry of Education needs to step up the plate, ensure that poor students, parents, and guardians are not exploited simply by individuals who are using education as means of exploiting their fellow human beings. The Book Before Boys country director is therefore recommending that the Ministry of Education demands the graduation slips for all schools and ensure private schools and Parents Teachers Association discuss all graduation fees. As the October presidential legislative elections draw nearer, former Finance Minister David Fahad wants the electors of Liberia to demand all presidential aspirants to promise Liberian people that any of them emerges victorious will establish a war and economic crimes court. According to him, this will help those individuals suspected of war and economic crimes not to go with impunity. Speaking in an interview with Newsman, Fahad noted that none of the aspirants have the manifesto indicative of war and economic crime code in the country. He also expressed disappointment about the way Liberians are conducting themselves in the name of politics, saying that the people's security, economic and social interests are not taken into consideration. The Association of Liberia Community Radio is expected to sign an in-person memorandum of understanding with 30 radio stations across Liberia. The signing ceremony taking place this Thursday in Monrovia on behalf of the National Information Dissemination Center will bring together 30 of its member stations across the country. The National Information Center is under the Swedish International Development Corporation Agency, SIDA, 3 years radio content syndication project in partnership with the Association of Liberia Community Radio with technical support for Internews. The objective of this project is to increase the quantity, quality, and reach of community radio content on critical issues through content syndication and information sharing, and improve the management organizational capacity and financial sustainability of the Association of Liberia Community Radio and its member radio stations. The partner stations include Radio Piso in Grand Kitmon County, Radio Torota in Bon County, ABJ Radio in Grand Bassa, and Radio Kituma in Lofa County. Others include Radio Bombing County, Radio Jol Africa in Magibi County, Radio G in River G, Voice of Sino in Sino County, Echo Radio in River Says, Smart Radio in Grand Chide, Grand Says Radio in Grand Cru, Radio Nimba in Nimba County, among others. Liberia's rebuilding party political leader, Councillor Luther Yufi, has stressed the need for the establishment of a new land administration policy at the Liberia Land Authority. Councillor Yufi, who termed land crisis in the country as troubling, noted that he sees the country rolling into a national crisis if the proper mechanisms are not put in place to handle the land disparities in the country. Addressing a news conference Tuesday at his party's headquarters in Cinco, the Liberia legal luminary and politician emphasized that land crisis cannot be settled by threatening legal actions against individuals who are involved in the illegal transaction of land across the country. According to him, the issue of land crisis can only settle through the setting up of a land administration policy that will mitigate the issue, and as such promised to institute such policy on his administration if elected to the country's highest seat. Councillor Yofi followed that he will set up a committee under the policy that will study all land forms in the 15 counties, especially Montreal County, which is termed as the hotspot for land dispute in the country. He added that the committee, among other things, will work together with community leaders and land owners aimed at resolving lands across the country, and at the same time examine land, stressing that it will help mitigate the issue of land crisis across Liberia. And Bon County District 7 Representative Aspirant Fode Fambula has cautioned the citizens of Bon County to be mindful of what those he termed as cosmetic politicians. Fambula said the cosmetic politicians he talked about are those involved into quick impact projects, which he said are not durable as election approaches and will leave the people after elections. Fambula expressed optimism for his elections comes October 10th, 2023, attributed his statement of his constituencies, so a consistency in the areas of developments and his total vote accumulated during the 2017 elections. A youthful Liberian politician noted that despite losing the election to Papa Kole, he did not give up, but continues his initiatives with the people and immediately began working in several areas that have brought smile on the faces of his people. Freedom News.
Many thanks to Ellis. And are you looking for the news bulletin? It is a regular featured on Freedom Evening News Basket. If you're just joining us, a reminder that you're listening to 45-minute production of all of the latest news about Liberia, Africa, and the rest of our global village. Let's now bring you the voices of those behind the news, beginning with this development. As the October presidential and legislative elections draw nearer, Former Finance Minister David Fahad wants electorates in Liberia to demand all presidential aspirants to promise Liberians that any of them emerge victorious will establish the War and Economic Crimes Code. According to him, if this is done, it will help those individuals suspected of war and economic crimes not to go with impunity. Speaking in an interview with Newsman, Fahad noted that none of the aspirants have the manifesto that's indicative of war and economic crimes code in the country.
The contestants, they are saying what they will do, but we, the voters, we should insist that whoever ascends to the position will bring the war crime code. That's one of the things we should insist upon, that they should assure us that they will bring the war. Why am I saying that? The corruption is very high and it impedes development. We have this crime code as it's been going around. People will think twice before they do some of the things they do because they know that what they do, they will come for it later on. I've been troubled by a couple of things. One is the way we are conducting ourselves in this campaign, insulting people, coming up with all kinds of things. You have to realize that multi-party system in a developing country is not the same as in the developed country. In our country, when we are in the process, we're in a war zone, we are enemies on both sides. And at the end of the game, when the whistle blows, there's winner take all. But we fail to also realize that everything in our developing country revolves around the president. And so we leverage insult and this, and we don't know who's going to ascend to the position. And that man will ascend there. And with all your insult, next year, there's going to be a lot of tears in this country.
David Fahad is former minister. They're speaking to newsmen in Liberia. To this development now, the national coordinator of a pro-democracy group, he for she Crusader Liberia, Tamba Johnson, has commended the House of Representatives for unanimously voting and concurring with the Liberian Senate in passing the Drug Act, thus making drug a non-bailable offense in Liberia. Speaking Wednesday in an interview with this station in Paintsville, Johnson called on President Weah for speedy approval of the law to help address the issue of illegal substance abuse. Johnson wants the signing or enactment of the act to be served as one of President Weah's legacy to leave behind in protecting the youthful population.
Well, first of all, let us say kudos to the Liberian legislators, the 54th legislators that have saw the need to pass this drugs law. Not only passing it, but making it non-bailable when it comes to even those who are importers, those who are dealers, and those who are manufacturers of the drugs. When they are found, it's non-bailable, almost like a rape law. When you are apprehended, you'll be put behind bar until we go through the justice system. It is very much unwelcoming. We pray that particular action of the legislators could be fast-tracking other areas of national concern in order to keep our nation on the right trajectory. So it's a welcoming news, and we pray as it has been passed by both houses and now on the decks, should be on the decks of the president will see it, feel it, enough to have it signed by him as one of the legacies he can ever leave behind when it comes to even ensuring to protect the young people of Liberia. As I said the last time, Liberian youth were being killed. The children of Liberia were being killed by the legislators based on the refusal to pass the drugs law. Apparently, they heard that I was accusing them.
Tamba Johnson is the head of a pro-democracy group under the banner He for She Liberia, there commending the legislature for the passage of the drug law in the country. The Institute for Democratic Action and Development, with support from USAID, on Wednesday held a day-long meeting geared towards strengthening CSOs and CBOs' capacity. The meeting brought together key stakeholders, including the European Union, the U.S. Embassy, CSO and CBOs, among others. Giving the overview of the meeting, the executive director of the Institute for Democratic Action and Development, Joseph Cheyan, said the gathering was to strengthen CBOs and CSOs' capacity to advocate for public that's policy implementation.
The reason we are here today is to today discuss our project. This project is being supported by USAID and basically it focuses on strengthening civil society capacity to be able to advocate for policy reforms, legislation, and implementation. As part of the project, we have key focus areas of this project. One is to strengthen civil society organizations' capacity to advocate for policy reform and policy implementation. The second one is to ensure that these legislation or policies are fully implemented. So we will be following up with different policy makers to make sure that these policies are.
Lawyers representing ex-Chief Justice Gloria Musu-Scott are fighting legally to release Justice Scott and 3 others from the Monrovia Central Prison by filing another motion at Criminal Court A. Defense lawyer application to the court, among other things, claimed that state prosecutors' pieces of evidence used to indict their clients is doubtful. As such, they are entitled to bail as provided by Chapter 13, Section 13.1 of the Criminal Procedure Law of Liberia. But one of the prosecuting lawyers, Councillor Lafayette Gu, said that defense lawyers' request bail is weak and empty because the issue of bail has since been passed upon by the magistrate court.
I'm not troubled at all. I think it's efficient expedition their own. My superior court have decided on this matter already. And so we respond. We know that the major crime being charged or indicted for is murder. It's a non-bailable offense. And the only thing that's available to the defendant will be the speedy trial.
The Constitution is clear as to granting a person's with child for a capital offense bail. And I think that's some of the reliance that provision evidence and prevention is not great. Even though you are responding to this motion, but don't they have a ground legally?
They don't have a ground legally. The very Constitution that you are talking about sets forth the condition, the exception as to which crime can be bailable or which is not bailable. We also know that the statute that they rely on is obsolete to the Constitution.
One believe that you have a strong evidence in prosecuting the ex-Chief Justice. So one may say, what harm will it cause when the Chief Justice is placed on bail?
The harm will cause will be a harm to the law. It means that we'll be violating the Constitution. So there should be no need for the Constitution to be violated, because any attempt to do so is tantamount to treason, and I don't think anybody will see the law and decide to misinterpret it when other opinion of the Supreme Court also support that particular provision of the Constitution.
Councillor Lafayette Gu is Kaufman lawyer there speaking. Well, he's taking us now with 32 minutes past the nose time to Gerald Morris at this juncture, who will bring us the passion of live sports. Gerald, good evening.
Good evening, Hagar. Good evening, Liberia, and welcome to the Passion. Timothy Weah has landed in Turin in order to undergo medical tests as new Juventus players. On Thursday, on a permanent deal from Lille, Weah will sign long-term deal on Thursday for a 12 million fee. CC United Football Club has confirmed that their talisman, Moses Thomas Mia, has been granted a visa for a 2-week trial with FC Tras Kenchi in Austria. Moses has been sharpening his skills and undergoing specialized training in Senegal since last month. He is expected to depart the country for Austria this Thursday, June 29th, 2023. 4 Liberian football referees have completed a West African Football Union Rival Zone A workshop for security and medical personnel in Bamako, Mali. The workshop, which was held from the 23rd to the 25th of June, aimed at updating participants' skills and knowledge of the medical and security aspects of football. The 4 officials include Beatrice Edwins, Isaac Aguan of the Security Committee, and Justinian City Hunter. And away from Liberia, Arsenal have reached an agreement with West Ham. they will sign Declan Rice for 100 million with 5 million add-on fees, according to top football writer Fabrizio Romano. And Edouard Mendy says goodbye to European football as he joins Saudi Arabian club Al Ahly on a 3-year deal from Chelsea for a fee around 80 million. He will earn 12 million per year plus 30 million add-ons. He is expected to sign a 3-year contract valid until June 2026. And that's it for the Passion of Life.
Gerald Morris and the Passion of Life Sports. It is a regular feature on Freedom Evening News Basket. In more developments, over 50 journalists covering the Ministry of Information have ended a day-long capacity building training in Monrovia. The training was organized by former BBC correspondent Hassan Kewu in collaboration with the MICAT Reporters Network with support from the Ministry of Information. At the end of the training, Information Minister Ledger Hu-Rening challenged practicing journalists to take advantage of training opportunities. According to Minister Rening, capacity building helps the work that journalists do. As such, they must be willing to learn at all times.
While we all are humans and we will make mistakes from time to time, we should also strive to not be complacent, to not be laissez-faire in the exercise of our repertorial duties, while at the same time in the exercise of plying our trade. You listen to the radio, most often you get carried away by the fact that you want to speak to a mass audience without going through training, the adequate training. This is just one of many efforts that should come in trying to continue to build upon the skills you already acquired, whether at university level or whether at technical training level for journalism courses at various journalism, academic or training institutions. The more you get these kinds of brush-up sessions, we call them, the better it is, because some of us who are where we are today didn't just benefit from the academic training, but also the brush-up sessions, at various media outlets that were organized, the training from time to time. Some of the things we learned, I call them the trick of the trade. And other things you learn academically, you learn them from working with professional people, from senior colleagues and senior peers. Take this session seriously, your dedication to want to learn more, to improve yourselves. One of the things I often tell the young people, I say, don't be ashamed to ask. It's better to ask than to go on the air and make mistakes.
He's Liberia's Information Minister, Ledger Hu-Rening. For his part, Mika Reporters Network Chairman Wulati said the network will endeavor to engage other partners to provide more training sessions for the organization members. According to Wulati, journalists have a pivotal role to play in society, and as such, building their capacities cannot be overemphasized.
So on behalf of the Ministry of Information Reporters Network, I want to appreciate the ministry and Big Brother Hassan Kewu for sharing with us. Our being here today was rewarding. Like I always said, as we draw closer to the October 10 pools, it is important that these kind of capacity building trainings be held, because we as journalists have a crucial role and pivotal role to play independent elections. So building our capacity is one of the things that we welcome. So we want to call on other organizations, most especially CEMEX, Internews, and other media institutions that are.
Wulati is the chairman of the MICAT Reporters Network. They're speaking earlier. You listen to the voice of Ledger Hu-Rening, Minister of Information, Republic of Liberia. They spoke at the end of a day-long training for journalists assigned at the Ministry of Information. A representative candidate of the People's Unification Party, Maurice Barbie, Wednesday continued his medical outreach in Crusoeville and Harrisburg Health Centers, respectively, in District 1 Monserrado. Speaking during the presentation, PUP candidate Barbie said the donation is meant to augment the efforts of government in providing the health needs of its citizens, particularly in District 1 Montserrado.
Mr. OIC would say, we are here. All our donation, we don't want for people to say we are lying. In Zimbabwe, we don't lie to people. We don't have it, we don't have it. They will bring one bag of paracetamol for you to tell the people that one bag we give.
Yeah.
Community service say yes.
So they can see.
Yeah. Because at times the people will blame the people. They say they may divine medicine. They may brought the whole truckload give to the men. The men said it. No. That there are few passes to cater to them for at least some time. Then government can come in. So for and on behalf of Zimbabwe, we are here today because we have supplied all of the other facility we have to Cruiserville and Harrisburg. We stop there to be Cruiserville. They are little things that we're able to lay here on. So these are the few drugs we brought with 1 or 2 medical something they want to say for just like first aid for them when they come. You have to pay them something so that they can be done.
Receiving the items on behalf of their respective health centers, the officers in charge of the Cruiserville Health Center and the Harrisburg Health Center lauded Zimbabwe for the gesture, thus terming it as timely.
Zimbabwe for at least remembering this clinic. Cruiserville Community Clinic, we say thank you very much for this kindness that you have afforded us today. And I think we'll go a long way because they took upon their time to come. You had to be very grateful to that. Of course, some people will not be grateful. No, you are not giving anything this and that, but you just took and you brought it so well. We have to appreciate it. So on behalf of the Cruiserville community and staff, we are pleased to receive you people and all the donation you people have made. We say thank you very much. It's time that we need it.
The voices of the officers in charge of both Cruiserville Health Center and the Harrisburg Health Center, they're speaking when they receive a consignment of medical supplies from Tim Barbie, a representative aspirant there in District 1, Montserrado County. The owner of 100 acres of land situated in Sonega Town in Marshall has clarified reports linking the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court to the demolition of the New Life Recovery Rehabilitation Center operated by the United Methodist Church in the area. The Front Page Africa June 27 publication indicated that Chief Justice Yaden Yor was involved in a land dispute between Clarence Mobulu and Alfred Janje and others. Making the clarification Wednesday, Clarence Mobulu said at no time did he interact or link the Chief Justice to the land dispute as reported by Front Page Africa. Sorry, we can lay our hands on that, except we hope to bring it during our subsequent news cast here on the program. A Liberian legal practitioner says one of the lessons learned from the just ended elections in Sierra Leone is for Liberians to fully participate in their presidential and legislative elections. Anthony Samuel Kofi Woods, who was a member of the West African Independent Observer Mission in Sierra Leone, said the National Elections Commission must play a natural role in the October polls. Speaking in an interview with Voice of America Daybreak Africa, Anthony Woods called on the civil society organizations and individuals to get involved in the voters' education.
Firstly, all Liberians, citizens, political parties, civil society, and all stakeholders must take ownership of the process of elections and see it as a process that could lead to the development and to the peace of our country. That's one. Two, everyone must get involved in civic and voters education and make sure that we all vote, because each vote will count and the value of our vote will determine the leadership of our country. Three, the Election Commission, which is the mechanism, must ensure and demonstrate a level of neutrality and ensure that they can inspire and guarantee the trust of the electorate by the very act, the conduct of the process as it proceeds.
What do you think so far with about
Anthony Samuel Kofi Woods there in conversation with James Porte of the Voice of America there. A pro-female development organization, Before Grace, has joined the call on the Liberian government to do it all it can in halting the high fees paid for graduation in private and public schools in the country. Book Before Boys Country Director Mustafa Shema said it is unfair, unthinkable, and exploitative for schools administrators to charge high fees for graduation.
The graduation fee is too exorbitant based upon the economic environment that all of us are in. If school would be charging $350 United States just for graduation fee, we think that it's not good, it's not fair. You are putting more burden on the parents. So we think that Ministry of Education need to come down with some kind of measure and to talk to most of the school operators to see how they can come with certain solution that graduation fee will not be too exorbitant. And what so many things we can get the trainer during the graduation, gown, certificate, these things are expensive.
At this juncture, we cross over to Alexander Yinikin. This time for our regional developments.
The United Nations has warned of an increasingly dire humanitarian situation in northeastern Nigeria. More than 40,000 people have been killed and 2 million more displaced in fight between the army and jihadist groups, including Boko Haram, over the last 14 days or years. Matthias Shema, the UN humanitarian coordinator in Nigeria, said the international community must act fast to prevent the situation becoming even more catastrophic. More than 500,000 people are facing emergency levels of food insecurity, one step away from famine, where they are ringing the alarm bell, AFP News Agency Samuel are saying. And elsewhere, the African Union force in Somalia has handed over 3 more military bases to the Somali army as part of a gradual withdrawal meant to conclude by the end of next year. By the end of June, the plan is to withdraw around 2,000 troops from Somalia. So far this year, the AU force has handed over 6 military bases, 5 of them in Melo Shabelle. The first base, located in the Helwa district of the capital Mogadishu, was handed over on 22nd January. It was also run by Burundian forces.
Many thanks to Alexander Yinikin for the news. That's the regional developments. He's taking us home on tonight's edition of the news program. Before we take leave of you, a reminder of stories that made headlines on tonight's edition. The head of Liberian delegation to the 62nd session of the Organization of African, Caribbean, and Pacific States Parliament has presented Liberia's gain through legislative indictment for the sustainability of women and youth empowerment. That's the Institute for Democratic Action and Development, with support from USAID, concludes a day-long meeting geared towards strengthening CSOs and CBOs' capacity in Liberia. Reports from Maryland County says the consortium leaders for the re-election of President George Weah in the Southeast have been charged and sentenced to 6 months imprisonment for misapplication of entrusted properties. And away from Liberia, the United Nations have warned of an increasingly dire humanitarian situation in northeastern Nigeria, according to the BBC. Thanks to you for your listening role. Thanks to our writers, reporters, editors, and contributors, and all those who helped in making tonight's edition of the news program a success. Alexander Yinikin was here with the news bulletin, inclusive of our regional developments. Gerald Morris, factor in the Passion of Life spokes. Abraham Kamara, Sarah Control, ably coordinated both the sound aspect and our live Facebook feed. For and on behalf of the entire team, my name is Hagar Gonda. I presented. Do have yourselves a pleasant good night from Monrovia.